Hello everyone and welcome back once again. In today's video, we'll learn on the town plannings of the Indus Valley Civilization. Under this topic, we will try to cover up on the layout of settlements as well as the domestic architecture. And under this domestic architecture, we will also be talking about the three most important topics, that is the drainage system, the Great Bath, and the Great Granary. To begin with, let's first of all start with the layout of the settlements. Now, as we talk about the layout of the settlements or the town plannings, we should keep in mind that in almost all the cities discovered in the Indus Valley civilizations, the city's plannings were divided into two parts, that is the western part or the western section or the eastern section. So in order to understand this difference, the difference between the western section and the eastern section of the town plannings, let's have a look on the Mohenjo-daro city planning here. The picture image that we are using here is just the Mohenjo-daro city planning, but I'm using uh, this because in almost all these town plannings of the Harappan civilization, like I've mentioned earlier, is similar with that of the Mohenjo-daro city planning, except for some few who will be talking about those uh, one or two cities which is exceptional cases. Okay, so for now, as you can see here on the screen, like I've mentioned earlier, on the eastern side is the eastern section and on the western side is the western section. This is the example of the town plannings of the Harappan cities here. So as you can see here on the screen, on the eastern side, which is eastern section, is much bigger than the western section here, and this eastern section, which is bigger in size, is also called as a lower downs. We should keep that in mind. And in this lower down section here, on the lower downs, the common people lived on the lower downs. However, on the other side, on the western section, it is called an upper down. The reason why it is called an upper down is because, as compared with the lower downs here, the upper downs or the western sections were built on the hilltop, and therefore there is a difference between the lower down and the upper down here. The reason why it is given as an upper down is because, like I've mentioned earlier, it was built on the hilltop. And let me also tell you that the reason why this western section or the upper downs were built on the hilltop, it is because the archaeologists or the historians are giving an assumption that maybe the Harappan people knew about the foreign invasions or the enemy invasions, and therefore this site, which is bigger in size, were built larger in size in the lower downs. However, these upper sections were built with a proper care, with proper fortification. So therefore, even at times where the foreign invasions or the enemies invade the eastern sections, the people will take this upper down, which is properly fortified with huge walls, as a protection places or as a defensive places for them to hide around. That is an assumption given by the historians or the archaeologists here. So that's all about the difference between here. The low eastern section is called the lower down, and in this lower down, only most of the common people lived on the lower downs. However, on the western section, which is also called an upper down because it was built on the hilltop, it is a fortified place, and this is fortified because maybe the Harappan people knew about the foreign invasions or the enemy invasions, so that they will take a refuge on this place. And you see here, these upper downs, if you see the map here, if upper downs were properly fortified with a huge walls, and this an area which is properly fortified with a huge walls are called as the citadels. You have seen that in your subject textbook as well. So uh, at the western end of the site is an area known as the citadel. This area of the city was built on top of the mound of bricks almost 12-meter high. A large staircase ran up the side of this mount. So that's all the difference between the western side and the eastern side. Like I've mentioned earlier, in almost all the cities of the Harappan civilization, we will see that the cities were divided into two parts, that is the eastern section and the western section. And the eastern section with the lower downs, called as the lower downs, and the western section called an upper downs because it was built on a hilltop. And these upper downs or the western sections are also called as a citadel. This is the common city planning you will find in almost all the cities of the Indus Valley civilization. But before we move ahead, like I've mentioned earlier, there are some exceptional cases in some few cities. All right, not not all the cities have the same structure. Of course, almost all the cities have the same structure, but there are few exceptional cases. Cities such as the Tolavera. When we see the city planning of the Tolavera, we will see a little bit difference or dissimilarities with the town plannings of the rest of the cities discovered at Harappan civilization. What is the difference here at the Tolavera is that, like I've mentioned earlier, in almost all the cities were divided into two parts, that is the eastern section and the western section. However, when we talk about the city of Dolavera here, you will see that the cities were divided not only with two sections but with three sections. On the western side, on the eastern side is the lower down, just like that of the Mohenjo-daro. In Tolavera, we have the eastern section. We also have the western sections, but in addition to this eastern section and the western section in Tolavera, we also have the middle city here. So that is why Tolavera becomes an exceptional cases when we talk about the down planning of the Harappan civilization. This is very important for you to remember in MCQ type of question. All right. So that is a distinction, or that is what makes it difference, what makes Tolavera city planning different from the rest of the city planning of the Harappan civilization. Now, apart from this Tolavera, there is also another very important city which we should never forget when we talk about the Indus Valley city planning. That is a city called Junhodaro. For those of you who have watched my previous video, I have also mentioned this in the last video, but in addition to that, Jonhodaro is the only Harappan site which did not have a citadel. So, like I've mentioned here, the western section is also called as a citadel. It was built on a hilltop with a huge fortification. What is citadel? Citadel is an area that is built with huge walls for with a brick, huge walls. A city that is properly fortified as a defensive weapon, or as a defense against the foreign invasion. So in almost all the town plannings of the Harappan civilization, we will see the presence of the citadel. However, when we talk about the Junhodaro city, this is the only Harappan site which did not have such a citadel planning. So this is very important for us to understand. The city called Tolavera, which is an exceptional cases that had the three sections, the city divided into three sections, and the Junhodaro, which had no citadel. All right, that's all about the layout of settlements or the town plannings. This Junhodaro is now in Sindh, which is in Pakistan after the partition of India in 1947. So Tolavera is in Gujarat. All right. So moving further, let's have a look on the drainage system now. Very quickly, we'll try to wind up the session. When we talk about the drainage system of this Harappan civilization, as you can see on the screen, we have all the materials available in internet. We have all the materials available in different books as well. We know that the drainage system that was managed by the Harappan civilization was far better than some of the drainage system that is carried out even today. We will be talking about what was the structure, how did they manage the drainage system so well and qualified and standard drainage system during those days. So in order to understand the drainage system here, first of all, let us just take an example here. In every Harappan sites, we know that the drainage system was well qualified, well planned. So in all the household here, this is just an example given here. In each and every household, you will see that there is a small bit provided in each and every household, and this small pipeline or the bit that is used for the layout of the drains or layout of the waste water that is being used from every household, these drains or a small pipe or layout will join with the channel that is just near to the household, and this channel that collects the layout or the dirt from the house will go and connect it with the bigger drainage system out there. So when we see about all these things, these are the examples of the household number one, household number two, or household number three. In each and every household, a bid is being provided so that the waste product or the waste liquid materials will be drained out, and they will go and join with the channel that is you know just adjacent to the house, and this channel will go and join with the mainstream main canal that has been constructed there. What most fascinating thing about the drainage system is that in each and every here on the canal that goes and join with the mainstream line here is in almost all the settlement we will see that it is with a 90-degree angle. So we can assume that the city planning, or especially the drainage system, was properly managed by the Harappan people. Some of the historians or the archaeologists also opine or also say that maybe the Harappan people have first of all constructed the drainage system, and only after constructing the drainage system the cities were built. There is no concrete solution on that or concrete proof on that, but there is when we look at the drainage system here, which were properly well maintained, it is an assumption given by the archaeologists and historians that maybe the Harappan people first of all built the drainage system, and after that they built the house or or the shops just adjacent to the canal. All right, so that the city will be properly maintained. Now, this is all about the drainage system. Another most important fascinating thing about the drainage system of this Harappan civilization is that you can see on the image here, these are the small bits or the slats of bricks that was placed upon the drain canal here. So these are not properly cemented, or these were not properly plastered. I should use the word plaster here for us to understand in a proper way, because these were these slat boards or the bricks, burnt bricks, were just placed on the top of this canal here, or you can just example of here also, so that these were loosely placed upon here so that they can lift up this lead board or the bricks, and they can clean up this canal anytime they want. If they blast, or if they plaster all these things, it will be impossible, or it will be very difficult for them to clean up the drains or the canals at the time when it becomes full. That is why these Harappan people might have placed this sled board loosely at placed upon the channel so that they can lift up the sled boards and clean up very quickly. So if we look at all these plannings, or all these imaginary plannings of the Harappan people, we should accept the fact that no matter how old this civilization may be, from the 2000 years back, 2000 and more years back, the civilization existed, we know that, but still then they had this city planning. They had a very well qualified, a well maintained system of city planning by that time. So this is all about the drainage system. Let's have a look here. The drains were mostly covered and hidden underground. They were covered by a layer of backed bricks, like we have discussed just now here. They were covered by a layer of backed bricks, which was laid flat across the side walls of the drain. The drainage system of the Harappan cities was the best known to the world in ancient times. The brickwork prevented the dirt water from leaking. So this is all about the drainage system. We should keep this in mind. This is very important topics. Now, next, let's talk about the Great Bath, and this is another very important topic and very common topic as you have when we talk about the Indus Valley civilization. You can see the image here, the Great Bath. Uh, it was surrounded by a courtyard with steps leading down into it. These are the steps as you can see here. It was surrounded by a courtyard with steps leading down into it. Water was evidently supplied by a large well in an adjacent rooms. You can see the adjacent rooms here. So maybe the waters were supplied down from the adjacent room, or these waters were carried out from the nearby rivers or wells that was constructed by the Harappan people, and they will fill this the, gr- the great bath. So uh, water was evidently supplied by a large well in an adjacent room, and an outlet in one corner of the bath led to a highly garbed drain that discoursed on the west side of the mount. So this great bath was also properly maintained or properly built like that of the drainage system. The we will see the steps leading down to the great bath, and on the top of this great bath you see these are the sections of the rooms. They also had different types of rooms here built on the upper layer of this great bath, and this is an assumption given by the archaeologists or the historians that these rooms were probably most probably made for changing the clothes after after taking bath in the great bath. Now, the most important thing about this great bath is that they believed it was built. It is also assumption given by historians that maybe the Harappan people used this great bath as a religious for a religious purpose. For those of you who have watched a movie called Mohenjo-daro by Hrithik Roshan, and the Buja HD in the Bollywood movie called Mohenjo-daro, you will see, in one scene where the actress will be, you know, uh, leading down to this great bath. All right, so you can just take an example of that as well. How beautifully, elaborate, how beautifully projected in the movie called Mohenjo-daro about the great bath of the Harappan civilization. So, um, the Great Bath is one of the best known remarkable structure among the ruins of the ancient Indus Valley civilization excavated at Mohenjo-daro in Sindh, Pakistan. So for MCQ type of question, this Great Bath is located at Sindh now, which is also in Pakistan after the partition of India. Most scholars agree that this tank would have been used for special religious functions where water was used to purify and renew the well-being of the bathers. This was a assumption given by the scholars and historians, because like I've mentioned in my last video, we have not yet deciphered the script that was used by the Harappan people, and therefore we never know what was the religion, religious activities that was carried on by the Harappan people. But we know the fact that religion was present. There was a presence of religious belief in the Harappan civilization, because of the fact, because if we look at the seals, if we look at the bendings of the cave paintings, or the art given by the Harappan people, or the seals that was used by the Harappan people, we can just assume that they followed certain type of religion, which may not be, which we may not conclude in a proper way, but we know the fact that the religion was present in the Harappan civilization as well. So it is believed that most scholars agree that this tank would have been used for special religious functions where water was used to purify and renew the well-being of the bathers. Lastly, this is the pictorial image that I was talking about, from the film called Mohenjo-daro, in the Bollywood movie. This was the scene captured from the movie. You can just have a look on the movie and just take an example here. This is the archaeological site pictorial image of the Harappan, the Great Bath, the steps leading down to the Great Bath, as well as here on the movie you will see that the actress will walk down to the pool surrounded by a group of people for some religious purpose, rites and rituals here. So this is an example given. All right, you can just go watch the movie and then extract the scene out there. Lastly, let's talk about the Great Granary. So this Great Granary, what is a granary? First of all, a granary is a storehouse or room in a barn for trussed grain or animal feeds. So in almost all the villages, we have the granaries. And the farmers will work onto the field, and after farming is done, they will harvest the crop and they will store it in one particular places, because we cannot store all the rice or all the grains collected from the field in our own house. Therefore we construct another separate room so that we will store the grains or the foods, that whatever it may be that has been produced from the field, we will store that in one particular room, and we will make use of that in times of whenever we are in need of it. So example, just like that, even in Harappan civilization also, there was a presence of this great granary. The Harappan people, constructed a great granary, a small granary, different types of granary or warehouses, so that after the construction, after the cultivation is been done, they will harvest the food or the grains and put it on the great granaries. Yeah. This type of granaries were found mostly in Mohenjo-daro and Harappan sites. We should keep in mind that the great granary, the greatest type of this type of granary is found at Mohenjo-daro. However, there is also, according to the archaeological report, there is also an evidence that even in Harappan city there was a presence of these granaries. The small six granaries were discovered at the Harappan cities out there. But we should keep in mind that the greatest or the great granary of all these granaries were discovered at Mohenjo-daro. Mm. This Mohenjo-daro is also now in the in the Sindh in Pakistan, as well as at the Harappan city is also now in Pakistan. We should keep that in mind. So historians believed that the Great Granary was used by the people of Harappa to store surplus food grains. There was two rows of granaries, and each rows had six granaries. So uh, we should keep in mind that these granaries were most probably constructed for storing the surplus goods. What is a surplus goods? An additional goods more than our requirements is called a surplus goods. All right. So these granaries were constructed by the Harappan people so that they will store whatever they produce from the field. They will store that in the granary and make use of that in times of drought, in times of famine, or in times of the public gatherings. They will make use of the granary, or they will make use of the food that has been stored in this granary. So when we talk about the granary, we should keep in mind that most of the granaries were found in Mohenjo-daro and the Harappan sites, but the great granary was found at Mohenjo-daro. However, in the Harappan site, granaries that was discovered in Harappan site were smaller in size than that of the Mohenjo-daro site. So with this, we will wind up our session for today. In our next session, I'll try to bring up some important MCQs related topics from the Harappan civilization, which will be the last topic for the Harappan civilization, and then we may move forward with the Vedic civilization in the next video. So thank you so much for joining this session, and I hope to see you all in the next video again. Thank you everyone for watching this session.